Hello and welcome back to McClaren Performance for an episode today where I'm going to try and predict who is going to get relegated. Is it going to be one of the newly promoted sides, Fulham, Bournemouth, Forest, or is anyone in the Premier League at the moment going to go down as well? Before I do get started though, make sure you go back and listen to or watch the interview I just did recently with Owen Eastwood. I thought it was a really good interview, really interesting. It's a bit different from the YouTube stuff I've been doing at the moment, but it is really interesting. I really enjoyed doing it and I'm really proud of it. So yeah, make sure you watch and listen to that if you can. But today, following from what I was talking about before, with teams getting in the top 4, within the top 10, today I wanted to talk about what teams I thought were going to get relegated. And I think it's a really interesting conversation to have. It's one I had to do a bit of research on beforehand because I wanted to understand a bit more about the Championship clubs coming up. But I've done that research now, got a bit of an idea, and I do really want to talk about it. First off, it usually is the case that clubs that get promoted from the Championship ultimately end up getting relegated within that same season. It's usually around 50%. So 50% of the 3 clubs that go up, usually 2 or 1 of them stay up and the other half go down. And you have to assume that's going to be the case this season as well. The teams coming up are Fulham, Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest. And you have to assume that 1 or 2 of them will be going down this season. In my estimation, I think 2 of them will go down. I think the Premier League is getting much more difficult as the points are being taken up a lot more by the top 6 as they get a lot more money and a lot more money to spend, much better players, much more time in the Premier League as well. A lot of the points are accumulating up at the top half of the table, even the top quarter, let's say. And that means that for the bottom half of the table, it's usually quite a desperate fight to stay in the Premier League. In fact, it's quite common now, I think, from 10th place to that first relegation position, it's usually a range of around 15, 16 points between those 2 places. So it really is tight in that bottom half of the table. And with saying that, it's always quite close, and it's possibly within that easier for promoted clubs to find their way in the gaps there to go up the ladder a little bit more outside of the relegation zone. Either way, it always seems there's 2 clubs that have just gone up that end up at the bottom of the table, and one that finds it a unique way of getting out of that situation, rising up in the table. I think last year's a good example of that with Norwich and Watford going down, but Brentford in a unique kind of way finding their own place within the Premier League and getting up to, I think it was 13th. So let's take a look at those 3 clubs that have just got promoted and see which one has the ability, or at least I think has the ability, to get out of that relegation zone, and which 2 do I think are most likely going to stay within it. And I think the first club that I'm going to start off with is Fulham. Fulham, quite an interesting club, one that go up and down the Premier League and the Championship quite a lot. Last season they did win the title, and they did so with, from Mitrovic, 43 league goals, which is something I'll get into, as well having Carvalho and Harry Wilson as well getting in double figures. So they quite dominantly took the Championship title. Marco Silva is the manager there, and he's someone I can't really quite put my finger on. When he's in the Premier League and he's managed teams like Hull and Watford and Everton, I never quite understood why he was getting passed around all these Premier League clubs quite a lot. He never really seemed to do anything at the clubs he was at. That's no question of his ability. Sometimes managers don't get a lot of time, but obviously these clubs seem to see something in him as they passed him around to 3 different clubs, ultimately finding himself at Fulham. And at Fulham he seemed to prove himself quite well his first season being there, getting the team promoted and being quite strong within the league, obviously coming first and winning the title. But for a few different reasons, I have my doubts of Fulham staying up this season. My main doubt is Mitrovic, and he's a great striker, one that's been really successful, and I have to specify this, very successful in the Championship. Like I said, scoring 43 goals just in league games alone is a fantastic achievement. He's obviously a top striker, but whenever he actually comes within the Premier League, I think, is it 2 seasons he's been in the Premier League now, he's never been that successful. Starting from someone who's playing FPL quite a lot, he's not one to have in a team despite his low price because he's hardly ever scoring. There are other attacking options, like I said before, is Carvalho as well, but he is just left to go to Liverpool. So they are lacking in a lot of what they had in the Championship, which is goals and can they actually replicate that in the Premier League? I'm not too sure. There is still a few weeks left in the transfer window, so it's hard to judge too much about transfers being made already. And with Fulham, they have signed likes of Pereira from Man United, and that is adding a bit to their squad, but it's not quite a lot, and it's not something that's encouraging me and making me think they are a team that is going to be challenging within the Premier League. Bournemouth are another club that I'm looking at in a very similar way. Again, still very early on and still a few weeks left in the transfer window, but haven't really made any big signings, any additions to their squad to make me think that they'll be staying up. I would argue that they'd have a chance of staying up if they were the similar team that they were in Bournemouth, say, a few seasons ago. But without Eddie Howe and without a lot of the players that they had when they were in the Premier League, say, for example, Callum Wilson, I don't think they're quite the same threat that they used to be. I have some hope in Scott Parker. Of course, he's managed within the Premier League before with Fulham. He was relegated with them, but he also brought them back to the Premier League, so there's some credit in that as well. The one club that I do have the most hope in, though, and for a number of different reasons, it is Nottingham Forest. Of course, they came up last season, finishing 4th in the Championship and winning the playoff final, so they are now in the Premier League. The manager there, Steve Cooper, who took charge over Chris Hughton after the first 7 games. I think they had 6 defeats, so that's when Steve Cooper stepped in, and their fortunes improved dramatically. Someone that interests me a lot as a manager, I don't know if I've talked about him on the podcast before, but he's someone who has come through the England setup. He's worked and managed, I think, the under-17s, and he's won the World Cup with them. And I think managers are coming from the England setup are learning quite a lot of things now in terms of the England DNA that they have within there and the way in which they engage players. I believe I saw a quote from Steve Cooper in terms of how he manages and coaches and how he asks questions of players and tries to engage them in that way. And I think that is a really good style of management. I can say that quite confidently because he is doing so well as a manager at Forest. And I'm hoping, and sometimes this is where it comes a lot as a prediction, a lot of optimism as well. I'm hoping that he's someone who's going to impress in the Premier League with Nottingham Forest. One negative of Forest is that they are losing Jed Spence, someone who was quite useful for them in right back in the Championship, and he has now gone to Spurs. But what is making it quite promising for me is from reading what helps a team survive in the Premier League is their defence, is their ability to keep clean sheets. And I see a lot of the signings that they are making at the moment seems to be a strengthening of their back line. I think a good example of that is Dean Henderson, who's coming on loan from Manchester United. They have Nico Williams as well, who's coming in to bolster that, along with other defenders as well from other clubs. I think they're making quite smart signings in that sense to keep a strong defensive line. I think they've also been known to play in a back 5, so I think that's probably maybe what they're thinking. On the tactical side, I'm not an expert on, but I think they know what they're doing. I think with Steve Cooper, I think he's quite a smart guy at the helm, and I think they're making signings that are going to help them. Another thing that Forest have going for them, which I've been reading quite recently in the strange rumours to be hearing, that Jesse Lingard is wanting to go to Nottingham Forest. They're willing to pay quite high wages to have him in the club, and he's definitely not a player where I'm saying, or if they get Jesse Lingard, they're definitely staying up. I don't think that's it. I think, like I said, I think defence is much more important. Ability to stay tough and keep clean sheets when you're at the bottom half of that table is much more important. But having that Premier League experience and having that attacking threat alongside other things will definitely be an advantage for them, a little edge over what Bournemouth and Fulham have at the moment. That's a bit of a long shot though, because that sounds like one of those signings that just, I can't see that happening. It seems so strange that Jesse Lingard would go and want to play for Nottingham Forest. I think maybe there's another episode to make on Jesse Lingard and the comments people make about him and his career, but for him, I don't know if Nottingham Forest is the right club. He knows better than me. After I recorded this episode, I ended up looking like an idiot because he did sign for Forest. I mean, I didn't expect to happen because I thought maybe I'd more ambition than that, having opportunities at West Ham as well. But he has signed for Forest, and that gives them a big advantage with regards to avoiding relegation. Regardless, I think my point still stands on Nottingham Forest. I think they will do well and they will get out of the relegation zone. I don't think Jesse Lingard is going to be a massive contribution to that. He will be a contribution, but I think their defensive capabilities will be what decides it. Relegation, it's a really difficult one to pick. I think it's much more difficult to predict than it is, say, the top 4, the top 6, because it's dependent on a lot of things. There's still a way to go within the transfer window. There's still signings they can make, and it's also those signings they do make. It's sometimes quite unpredictable how those players are going to do. I think looking at the names that are being transferred in, they're not names that I'm aware of, and they're players from leagues outside of, say, the Premier League, the Championship, mainly a lot of unproven players. So it's quite difficult to figure that out exactly. It's just my instinct is leaning more towards Nottingham Forest at the moment. I think I do like Steve Cooper and what he's doing, his style of management. I think I like the players that they are bringing in. I like what is going on there. And they are a club really where I think a lot of people do want them to be in the Premier League. I think, and when we talk about clubs and teams and having that narrative, I think they will be the team feeling they are most deserving of staying in the Premier League, who have a history of being in top flight football. And I think that really fans, the club as a whole, will be expecting them to fight towards getting back to that sort of status. So going down so far, I've got Fulham, I've got Bournemouth. I think they're quite safe options to take. It's going to be funny when that doesn't happen, but for now, I think they're the 2 clubs that are going down, and I think maybe Forest will do well, and maybe they'll get out of that relegation zone again. I'll look like an idiot when they get relegated anyway, but I'm maybe being optimistic for them, and I kind of like what they're doing. So the question is really, who is going to take that 3rd spot? Who is a standard within the Premier League at the moment, and who is looking like slipping into that 3rd spot there? Before I started working on this video, I was coming up with ideas of who I thought had low chances this season, and Leeds was coming into my head. I thought, Leeds, I ain't heard much from Leeds, and what they're doing doesn't sound great. They just changed manager, they don't have Bielsa anymore. They were slipping a bit last season. I hadn't heard much in terms of signings, and then I actually researched what they were doing, and I'm like, oh, there's no chance. I think they'll be alright. Just for one point, I really do like Jesse Marsch as a manager. I liked Bielsa before, but I really like the choice that Leeds made in Jesse Marsch. He's someone who I think has a more holistic understanding of management, if that makes sense. He understands the tactical and the technical aspect, but he also has an understanding of that psychological one as well. He talks well in terms of motivating players. He uses lots of quotes from Muhammad Ali and the likes of that. He'd been reported quite, I think, biased in a way. I think that's that foreign perspective. Again, when a foreign manager comes in, it's different. American, we're not used to Americans. It's something for the media to pick at, but it's different, and I quite like his approach to management. Despite how much I do like Jesse Marsch, though, they did have a tough run towards the end of the season. I think what Bielsa did well is he took Championship players who really, there were no stars within that team at the time, and he took that squad, that team, and made them work really, really hard, and made them really, really technically good. And from that, he got them quite safely within the Premier League. But I think that steam runs out after a while, that narrative. I think it does for a lot of teams coming out of the Championship. There's that idea, there's that vision of, right, we're going to become a Premier League team. And then when they do that, sometimes it's, I think maybe this is subconscious, teams think, well, where do we go from here? What's the fight now? We can't get into European football. We haven't got the money for that. We haven't got the signs for that. At some point, that collapses. I think the hard work that Bielsa had the players doing, I think ultimately backfired on him towards the end. And I think Jesse Marsch came in and was a bit of a arm around the shoulder, a bit nicer to them. I think he kind of openly criticised Bielsa for the work he made them do. And I think he got a different sort of performance out of them. Despite that, they were still the standard that they are, and I think they were slipping a little bit to the bottom three of the table. I was worried on top of that because they have lost players like Calvin Phillips, who has gone to Man City, and Rafinha as well, who's gone to Barcelona. So I thought they were losing a lot. If they had stars in their team, that was certainly them, and losing those players is a big knock for them. But it turns out they gained almost 100 million from losing those players, and with those, they've kind of spread the money out and signed a lot of players. It seems like Jesse Marsch is utilising his connections within Red Bull, because I got the list here, and I think they made 3 signings here from Red Bull clubs. They got an attacking midfielder for 30 million, defensive midfielder for 15 million. They got a right back as well for almost 10 million, defensive midfielder as well from Bayern Munich, left winger from Feyenoord. They're taking a lot from different places. I think it will be really interesting to watch Leeds next season. I don't know what that's going to mean for their starting 11. I don't know who is going to be in that setup anymore. It looks almost like a different team. It looks like the club is trusting Jesse Marsch to build on what they already have and build something that's more sustainable within the Premier League, which is certainly something that they needed, because that's what Bielsa did last season, what he did so well. He got so much out of those players that they already had. They now need to develop beyond that. Everton is a team that worries me. They do worry me, but also I know they have the facilities behind them, the money behind them, where they could maybe be safe. But they worry me a lot in terms of they just lost Richarlison, they've sold him. I haven't seen them make any signings as of yet. I think they got Tarkowski on a free transfer from Burnley, which is a good signing. I have just seen them lose 4-0 to a team. I don't even know the name of the team. It's a pre-season game, so it's hard to judge, but that's not very convincing. Frank Lampard as a manager, I think I talked about on an episode before. I think he's developing as a manager. I don't think he's experienced managing a team at the bottom of the table. He's managed Derby, who are fighting for promotion. He's managed Chelsea, who are fighting for that top four all the time. And when they hired him as Everton manager, I didn't think that was quite fitting, and I don't know how long that is going to last, especially because the survival rate of managers at Everton isn't usually that great anyway. I think they'll be okay regardless, because they're Everton. I just can't see Everton going down. They seem like such a big club to go down. They seem too big to go down last season, and that came down quite close to the wire. I don't know if they're going to allow that to happen again. I think maybe that's a wake-up call for them, but there's nothing yet to say they'll be safe. It's just more I'm expecting them to make some deals and do some things that are actually going to help them. I'm not seeing it yet, but it seems likely that's going to happen. Brentford as well are a team that you would expect to be around that bottom half of the table. They did really well last season to stay up, and it's something I touched on there. I think it's good when a club just comes up and they have that belief, they have the fans behind them. I remember seeing their first game of the season. I think it was at home for Brentford, and you could see the crowd behind them. I think they won that game or drew that game, I can't remember, but you could tell the support they had around them, and you could kind of see from there they were going to do well and probably survive within the Premier League. Can that momentum carry on into the next season? I'm not too sure. I think it's sometimes you have that narrative, and when you stay in the league, it's almost like mission accomplished. We've done that. And then where do you then go from there? And for Brentford, it's possible that they could start slipping now because of that. The one hope I do have, they got Tony, who is a top striker. I think a lot of this staying down, yes, it's a strong defence, but it's also having that top striker who's proven to score in the Premier League. That's such a big part of doing well in the Premier League, I think, because it's so hard to come by a striker, one that is reliable, one that is scoring goals, and they've got Ivan Toney who's doing that. So I think for them, he is someone who's going to help them a lot to stay in the Premier League. So I'm not massively worried about them. They will just be one of those clubs that are within that bottom half, I think. The team that worries me, and the one if I have to pick a team that is going to get relegated, I think it would have to be Southampton. Just looking there, their last 11 games, I think, they only won one game, drew 2 of those as well, and for the most part lost all their games, which isn't a great run. Their response to that hasn't really been a change in manager or a change in many other ways. It's been a change in coaching staff, which is something I've not quite seen. I think it's something to expect long-term change from a change in coaching staff as they do work with the players, and that develops over the next few years. But I can't imagine a lot of short change happening within the short term from changing coaching staff, maybe changing the manager, but not the coaching staff. There's rumours as well of James Ward-Prowse leaving, who is arguably one of their best players. And with that, they are bringing a lot of players in. The question is, are those players actually going to make an impact or not? Are they going to make the biggest difference to a team that have lost, I think, 10 games very recently? I like Ralph Hasenhüttl as a manager. He's been there for quite a few seasons now, and while he has kept a steady ship and they've been quite consistently, confidently staying within the Premier League, I've not seen them develop much more from that. And at some point, as an owner of a club and watching a club, you want to see some development, I think, and it's this season or not for seeing whether Ralph Hasenhüttl can actually make that difference. Can he actually push this team forward? the trajectory at the end of the season suggests not. And maybe this change of coaching staff will make a difference. But in terms of the other teams around them, there's a much more upward trajectory to them. And to Southampton, there's much more of a stale downward trajectory to them. They are my pick for being relegated. But like I said, it's quite hard to pick that. And there are 4 or 5 teams within that mix who could just as easily fall within that place as well. It's just at Southampton, it feels like, and it's much more of an instinct, it feels like their time is coming a little bit. Southampton, Bournemouth, Fulham, they are my picks for going down. It'd be quite interesting to see what actually happens. I just can't see those teams doing much. You never know really until that season starts, and suddenly players that you don't know about, signings that they've made, they might surprise you. They might come out of nowhere and suddenly be very consistent players within the Premier League. There might be very good organisation and structure behind the scenes that suddenly make that Championship outfit suddenly more of a Premier League outfit. We've seen it with a lot of teams coming up. Bournemouth is a great example of that. They came up with Eddie Howe and they stayed within the Premier League for so long with players that beforehand weren't big names, and they kept that consistency regardless. So it's such a hard thing to guess. The top 6 a bit easier, but that relegation zone is going to be interesting this season, to say the least. Anyway, yeah, they are my predictions. Thank you for watching and listening as always. I guess a few things to round off with. Make sure you join the FPL. I've been saying about the FPL for quite a while. I think I may do a video, or at least talk about at the end of the video, talking about what team I'm picking and why I'm picking certain players, and that'll be quite an interesting thing to do. So definitely join that if you haven't already. It should be fun, should be good if it's part of the podcast. Yeah, all of that. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like the video. If you did enjoy it, make sure you subscribe as well if you keep watching. There's always so many people that watch videos and then don't subscribe to the channel. It'd be good if I could get those people subscribed. It would help build what I'm doing at the moment. If you listen on Spotify, on Google, on Apple, like I always say, 5 stars, that would be nice, thank you. We've got 5 stars all around so far, so that's quite nice. And yeah, all the support I can get is absolutely fantastic. Comments that I get from people, I don't always get the chance to reply, but the supportive comments that I do get really keep me going, and I really do enjoy them. They always pop up on my phone whenever I'm walking anywhere. I suddenly see someone said a nice thing about me. It really does. It does keep the channel going and keeps me enthusiastic about it. But regardless of it, I'm still enjoying doing it. It's so much fun just doing little funny episodes like this, really. And then we can also talk about some serious psychology topics alongside that. I like it. It's fun. So thank you for supporting anyway. It's great. I can't wait for the league to actually start. It's going to be so interesting making videos and doing the podcast while the football is on. It's difficult coming up with ideas at the moment, but I think when the league starts, I think there'll be so many things to talk about. So I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, thank you for watching and listening. I'll see you again next week.